Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Fireside Chat. My name's Anisha, and I'm here from Amazon. I'm a developer evangelist on the apps and games team, and I'm joined by my colleague Mario.
Anisha, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you today?
I'm all right. So, hey guys, for everyone that doesn't know me, my name is Mario, and I work in with Anisha with Amazon in the apps and games team in developer relations. So we have a great episode today, don't we, have Anisha?
Yeah, definitely. I'm super excited about today's episode. One of my favorites, security and testing your Fireside apps. Um, but before we jump in, we wanted to wish everybody a very happy International Women's Day. Today is a very special day to celebrate all the women in our lives and to recognize everyone's great achievements. And we have some really fun facts to get us started off. So I went to a really fun pub quiz yesterday, and the whole quiz was dedicated to International Women's Day. And I'm ashamed to say we did not come first, or second, or
Oh
third.
no.
We didn't do very well, but I learned some really cool things. So I'm gonna drop you some International Women's Day pub quiz questions to get us started off in today's
Love
episode.
that.
So the first one was, who was the first ever computer programmer? So if you know the answer, drop it in the chat. And if you don't, we will tell you in about.
Yeah, but we want to hear from you guys. Like, do you know who was the first ever computer programmer? I love these questions. Great pub quiz question, but today is very fitting question. So
Definitely.
post it in the chat, guys. Do you have any idea? If not, we'll tell you in about 10 seconds. So how did it go yesterday, Anisha? Did you were you at least like top three?
We came fourth, so it wasn't too bad.
Ah,
We
we
do
have
have an
actually
answer.
we do have an answer.
Yes, correct. Ada Lovelace.
It is correct.
So Ada Lovelace is a very famous woman. So she was, I mean, she's meant to be the first ever programmer, and she was a very inspirational woman. I think Mario, you have some fun facts about her, don't you?
Yeah, totally. So she was a English mathematician, and the cool thing is that she's accounted as one of the pioneers of programming because she was the first actually to have written an algorithm for a machine that was called the analytical machine. It was this device that was developed in the early 30s of the 19th century, 1830s. And it's so interesting because this device, the analytical machine, had all the components, or at least the basic components of what we would call a computer today. It even had in LAU an arithmetical and logical processing unit, which is what we can find in today's processor, in all the devices that we're using right now to broadcast this session. And that we use in every day in our phones, in our computers. So it's so fascinating to see, that 2 centuries ago already,
Mhm.
there was by all means what we can call computer programming, and it was a woman that was pioneering this. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it's super cool, isn't it? And one of my other questions is, the terms bug and debugging were popularly attributed to which amazing woman? If you know the answer, pop it in the chat. Otherwise, we will tell you in 10 seconds again. Um, it's amazing to think that like so long ago, these like inspirational women like created things that we use today, and like debugging is something we're going to be talking about today. So to think that this came up like over almost 100 years ago. um so if nobody knows, do you know, Mario? Who are the
I
terms?
do know, but I would love. Here we
Yes.
go. Oh,
And again.
and again, she's winning everything today. We need to co-opt you for the next pub quiz,
Yeah.
Anshang. So yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely. So Grace Hopper, yes. So she was working on the Mark II computer at Harvard when her associates discovered there was a moth stuck in relay, therefore, impeding the operation. And she remarked that they were debugging the system, and that's where the term debugging comes from. So definitely need
Yeah.
you on my pub quiz team, Ange, next time. But that brings us to today's topic, actually. So we're going to be talking about debugging and security and testing of your Fire apps. So we're going to cover a couple of things. So we'll look at DRM, which is digital rights management, and then I'm going to show you a live demo of the in-app purchasing and DRM app tester. And then Mario will be demonstrating the live app tester. So some really cool tools that you can use to debug, to test your apps, and to make sure that you're getting the right security when you're putting them live. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah.
awesome. And yeah, one thing that I want to say is that we acknowledge that there are a lot of different tools, app tester, live app testing. It might be confusing. So today we'll try to do our best to explain what each function is for. If you have questions, if you want to know more, if something's not clear, please pop in, your comments and questions, and we will try, again, to answer all of your questions. Before we jump in, I wanted to remind everyone that if you are on Twitter, and you should be, or on any social media, please use the hashtag Amazon Fireside Chat to share with the world about today's session and what you have learned. And yeah, we would like to hear more even after the session. If you use this hashtag, and you also posted and tag us into the, as usual, into our accounts above, like Amazon App Dev on Twitter, on Twitch, we'll be able to try to answer your questions even afterwards. So please share hashtag Amazon Fireside Chat. Anisha,
And
back to you.
yeah, I was going to say, and if you don't have any questions, drop me your favorite International Women's Day fact, because they are one of my favorite kind of facts. But without further ado, let's jump in. So, as I said today, the first topic we've got is digital rights management. So, what is digital rights management? So, digital rights management is used to address developer concerns around unauthorized copying and distribution of their app. So when you implement DRM in your app, you limit access to your app so that only users who purchased your app can actually install it on their authorized devices. So DRM used to be implemented when you submitted your app automatically by Amazon. However, now there are a couple of changes because the DRM API now comes shipped with the Appstore SDK. And if you haven't heard the Appstore SDK, we have a couple of videos on this. But what it basically is the new SDK that exposes the DRM API and the in-app purchasing API. And we can share the links to those videos if you want to learn how to install the Appstore SDK in the chat. So I'll let Mario briefly drop those in.
I will.
But with the Appstore SDK, there were a couple of changes that came about for digital rights management. So the first one being that the Appstore SDK will no longer enforce DRM for your app. So previously, when you uploaded your APK into the Amazon App Store, you had the option to select yes or no for Amazon applying DRM in the APK files tab, as you can see on screen. With the new App Store SDK, Amazon no longer adds that wrapper around your APK after you submit it. Instead, you will need to add DRM within your app and take extra steps to manually incorporate those license checking functions through the DRM API. And to do this, I do have a tutorial, but I will be going through the steps very shortly. So the old DRM API and its functionality will be discontinued in the future. So please make sure you upgrade to the new one. So how to upgrade to the Appstore SDK and the new DRM API. So the first step is to download and configure the Appstore SDK. So to do this, head over to developer.amazon.com/SDK download. And you can, over here, you'll be able to see the Android version and you can download this. This download includes the Appstore SDK jar file, API documentation, and examples, which I will be showing you soon. So don't worry, we'll be demoing the live example. The next step you have to do is to configure the Appstore SDK with your public key. However, there is a step-by-step guide on how to do this too. And once you've configured the Appstore SDK with your public key, you will then have to initiate license verification functions. So this this is done by calling verify license. This method exposes the license servicing class, and it takes two parameters as its input: the application context and your implementation of the licensing listener. So you can initiate the license verification when your app launches with either in the onCreate method of your main activity or in the custom implementation of the application class. Sorry, I realized my slide just skipped ahead. Sorry about that. But the third and final step is to implement the licensing listener. And the licensing listener defines a single method, the onLicense command response. And this method is called by the Appstore SDK after it receives the result of verify license from the Amazon App Store. So the license response will contain the status of the verify license call. And a basic implementation of what this would look like is shown on screen again. Again, all this code will be in that demo file, the demonstration in the SDK download in the examples. But the license response will contain the status of the verify license call. And this return status would either be licensed, not licensed, error verification, error invalid licensing keys, expired, or unknown error. So this is just like a quick whirlwind into how to implement the DRM API. But we do have a video on YouTube that goes in depth into all of these steps for you to follow along and implement it yourself. Or you can check out the file in the SDK download and download and play around with yourself. So now that we know what digital rights management are, the question I'm sure you all have is, how do we test it? So to test not only the DRM API, but also the in-app purchasing API, we have an app called the in-app purchasing app tester. So the app tester, I'll just stop sharing this and talk over like what the app tester is. So the app tester allows you to unit test in-app purchasing and DRM functionality, as I said, of your app in sandbox mode before you submit your application for publishing. So to do this, you'll need to download the app tester on the same device as your app. And the app tester will then simulate the Amazon App Store client. So that's what sandbox mode means. So when it simulates the App Store client, you'll then be able to test your app. So the good part of this is always the demo. So I'll jump right into showing you guys how you can do this. So
Amazing.
if Mario, you wanted to add anything while I just pull up the app tester.
Yeah, no, I think again it's I would say especially important for as you said before, Anisha, for those that already implemented DRM or that were using the previous integration of DRM. I want to reiterate how important it is to transition to the new Appstore SDK, because it will be it will be deprecated in the future. So the sooner you update your application and transition to the new functionality, the better is going to be for your app. And the implementation, as we've seen, is fairly straightforward, but I think that testing is the cool part. So I see that you have the app tester ready, so I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, so this is the app tester here. So I just downloaded it from the Amazon App Store. It's called Amazon App Tester, and this is sort of the screen you'll be presented with when you jump into it. What I've also got is two applications. So I'm going to talk about the DRM application first. So this is just a really simple DRM application where I followed the steps I talked about to implement those license checking functions. So that will be the verify license function and the licensing listener. So my application just shows me my response of the of what my DRM status is. This demo application can be found in the SDK download, so you can clone it and play around with it yourself. So at this point in time, my license response is licensed. So if I now use the app tester, I head into it, I have 7 options I can interact with. So the first is my user account settings. So this just gives me the option to play with one of 3 users. I have subscription purchase settings. So these are all to do with the in-app purchasing API. So I'll look at those with you in a second. I have the DRM API response setting, which is what we care about right now. So looking at the DRM response setting, I had set it to license, which is what we saw. Now, if I want to play around with the different responses that I can present to my application, I can click not licensed. So if I click not licensed, this will mimic what the Amazon Appstore client would do. And if I head back to my sample DRM app, you can see that the status has changed to not licensed. So it's super easy with this app tester to test your DRM functionality. Um, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add to that, Mario. It was just a quick demo.
No, it works beautifully. I don't know, Anisha, will you show us some live coding, some actual implementation of the sample app, or not?
I can definitely do that. Yeah, so I'll wait to do that to the end.
Oh,
Let
cool. Yeah,
me.
that's fine. Brilliant. I think, yeah. Thank you for showing that. I think it was super interesting to see how easy it is to test the DRM implementation. And maybe one thing that we can explain is that even though like this is a very easy demonstration, it's just one text field that is updated with the status. What actually happens is that behind the scenes, what is triggered is a change in the API, and the status of the license changes itself. So once we have implemented a callback, and I'm sure that Anisha, you will show that in the Android Code Studio, in the Android Studio
Mhm.
code, it will show like literally um, what is the callback that enables those changes in status. And you can, I think an important bit is to build your application in a way that that degrades gracefully in case, for example, there is a problem in testing the app. Like, because what you don't want is just to make sure like a function that terminates the application immediately. You might want to send a prompt to the customer to say, like, for example, well, your application is no longer licensed, and here hence why its functionality is going to be impaired, or why it will stop working. So the user can then take a prompt action. Because otherwise, for example, I saw some implementation of this where the developer was immediately truncating the behavior of the application, and it was just like killing the app. And then it behave in that sense. It will behave. It won't be a graceful degradation, right? It will be like the user doesn't really know what's going on and doesn't really understand why the app has stopped working. There will be a prompt. If there are situations, for example, in which let's say, for example, the application runs without the Amazon App Store being installed. And that is a case, in particular, if you're using the Amazon App Store on third-party Android devices where you need to have the App Store installed. Then the application will send a message that said you need to have Amazon App Store installed to use it. This is not much the case for Fire TV or Fire tablets, because those have the Amazon App Store as not something that you can disable. It's part of the Fire OS integration. But on third-party Android devices, that is very much a possibility. So it's important that your application, behaves gracefully in that case. Sorry,
Yeah.
Anisha.
No,
Back to
that's
you.
great information. Um, so that brings us on to the second part of testing, which is are in-app purchasing testing. So we did go into quite a lot of detail about this in our previous session, which was talking about the in-app purchasing API. But I'll show you, like how this works. So again, I have a sample application right here. Again, very simple application. It just lets me buy a subscription, presents the interface from the app tester, which shows me what subscriptions I can subscribe to. And this code, again, we delved into it a lot deeper. So if you want to know how this all works under the hood, we did have a previous session, which we can also share the link to briefly. But again, so here we go. So if I subscribe to, say, a $5 subscription and I click subscribe, my app will change to show me that I am subscribed to this subscription. Now, if I head back to the app tester, there's a lot of different functionalities I can now play with. So firstly, I can change my user. So at this moment, I was logged in as user one. And if I look at the transactions, I can see here that user one subscribed to this subscription and it was fulfilled at, this point in time. What I can also see, which is really cool, is a JSON file of all these in-app items that I created on the developer portal. So I'd created two types of items, two subscriptions with two different price values, and those are here. And I can see the terms, the descriptions. My $12 subscription is a quarterly one, whereas my $5 subscription is a monthly one. If I want to delete this transaction, I can do that here as well. So if I go back to my in-app purchasing app, it shows me that that subscription is no longer available. So if I were to go and buy it again, and now change my user. So if I go back to the app tester, I can change my user to be user 2. I can subscribe to something as user 2. Here we go. And now if I look at the app tester again, I should be able to see those transactions as user 2. So it lets you play around with different users as well, which is really nice. You can simulate, having multiple users of your application. You can see the transactions that those users would go through when they were interacting with your app. What you can also do is play around with the different API parts of the in-app purchasing API. So, for example, you can change the purchase method to say failed. So mimicking what would happen if, say, your user were to try and subscribe, but the purchasing method failed. So once I set this to failed, if I go back to my in-app purchasing app and try and buy a subscription, you can see that this doesn't work anymore. The buy subscription button doesn't trigger the purchase method, and so nothing actually happens. It's not talking to my client. So it lets you play around with different scenarios that could happen within your app, like very real case scenarios, and gracefully, as Mario said, gracefully give the user an interface to show them what would happen if a purchase failed. In this simple demo app, we don't have it like popping up with the message saying, oh, sorry, your purchase failed, but you can test these different scenarios really easily with the app tester. So the last part of the app tester I wanted to show you was notification settings. So you can also show the user like different notification settings. So for purchase updates notifications or notify fulfillment notifications, you can play around with all these different settings within the app tester. So I think that's about it for the app tester. If you want to see more on this, we'll definitely share the link to the video where we talk about it in a lot more detail in our previous session. We also have videos on YouTube that go into how you can set this up and the different parts of the in-app purchasing API. We released those last week. So great content for you to be able to implement the API and then test it.
I'll add the link as well to install and configure the app tester so everyone has it, and I will post it in the chat right now. So let's see if there are any questions on the app tester that you guys are interested in. Anything they want to know more? I think Anisha, you did a great walkthrough. But yeah, I think it's so powerful to have something that is very visual and practical, and you can run on the device itself, and see what your application behavior is. Of course, you need to run it on a device that has the Amazon App Store. So, for example, I wanted to mention this. If you're testing your application on a third-party Android device, and you install the Amazon In-App Purchase API, or you install again the Appstore SDK, and you're implementing the DRM, but you haven't installed the Amazon App Store itself, like you can do that if you have the app tester. But if you don't have the app tester, and the only way for you to get the app tester is to install the Amazon App Store, then your application will not be able to test these APIs. So your application will likely crash when you're launching it. Or so it's important that you configure and set up your testing environment before you even start implementing the API in your application. I mean, you can, of course, implement the API and then submit it. And I will show you in a second how you can do that. You can do that with one feature that's called live app testing. But it's important that the first iteration of your tests should always be using the app tester implementation for both EAP subscriptions, of course, and DRM, like you shared, Anisha. Great. So I see that there are a few comments, but they're not really related to in-app purchase. So I think there is a comment about account. My suggestion, if you have challenges with this, is fairly common. If you have issues with your developer account or implementing your applications and something goes wrong, my recommendation is always to go on developer.amazon.com. There is a feature there called Contact Us. You can submit a trouble ticket to our support engineers and developer advocates, which will, as soon as they can, will jump in onto your trouble ticket and try to solve your problem. So if this doesn't work and it's still stuck, please reach out to us, and we'll try to do our best to engage that team directly and try to escalate. But the first stop should always be, and the first question, if a developer asks me, like, can you help me getting this done, is always, have you submitted a trouble ticket? Because that is the best way to get your account, your submission issues resolved swiftly. Wonderful. All right. So I don't see more questions about the app tester. So shall we jump in and talk about the live app testing, Anisha?
Yeah, definitely. While you do that, I'm going to try and pull up the sample DRM app.
Great. All right. So I will share my screen, actually, and I will also think, Anisha, if we can then share the link for getting started with the live app testing. I'll share our official documentation. That is a great way to explain how live app testing works directly. So give me 1 second.
Lots of things to share today.
So many things to share. Here we go. So this is the official documentation for live app testing. Hopefully you guys can see it. Great. And Anisha, I think you're sharing the link on the brilliant. So what is live app testing, first of all? So live app testing is a functionality that allows you to basically beta test your application. What you can do is, once you are comfortable, if you run your tests using, for example, the app tester, you've done some unit testing, and you're comfortable that your application is in good shape, the best thing you can do is start exposing your applications to users. But you want to do that in a controlled environment. You want to test your application in a production-like environment without the application necessarily be live for all customers. We will touch right after this on some horror stories of what can happen if you don't do this, if you just test in production, which is something you should never do. But in this case, we're literally talking about testing in production in the sense of a production-like environment where you have all the bits and bobs of the behavior of your application like if it were live, but it's in a gated environment where you have control on. So, how does it work? It all starts on the developer portal. When you submit a new application, you have the opportunity to activate live app testing. And live app testing is a dedicated dashboard that allows you to add testers to your app. You can then decide what type of testing you want these selected users to do. You can even manipulate, for example, talking about in-app items. As you can see here, there is a button that says reset in-app items. You can, for all your users or for a group of users, you can reset the in-app items that they have used. Let's say if they have subscribed or used an entitlement, you can automatically then reset them to 0. So how does this work in broader terms? So first of all, you have an opportunity to add new tester to LAT, to live app testing. This you can do in a bulk way. There is a function for you to upload a CSV file format of all the testers that you want to add. This is very useful. Let's say that you have, a big number of users. Let's say you have, like, I don't know, 50 testers or 100 testers that you want to use, that you want to add. You can, first of all, create the groups for them, but also upload the CSV file, which needs to have basically 3 fields, which is email, first name, and last name. And by uploading this CSV, all of these testers will be added to live app testing. And then you can decide to create a new tester group, as well, as you can see here. And therefore, you can also group your users based on, let's say, for example, it could be about, there could be different type of users, so different type of functions that you want them to test. So you can group them as well. You can bulk upload them, as I just said, or you can also add them manually. Let's say that you only have a couple, you want to start adding them manually. You, of course, have the option to do that. And then the process is basically the same as you would have for a normal application. You can then manage all of the different testing that you have, but what you have on the developer portal is very much the same interface that you would have for submitting a full-scale application. You can add all the you can add all the images and descriptions and meta tags to the developer portal for the live app testing version, which is literally uploaded as a separate version from the production version. And then you can release this, you can submit this application, and then your testers will receive a communication in form of email that prompts them to sign up to, of course, they need to sign up to the Amazon Appstore, and then they will receive on this email account that you added to the live app testing dashboard. Through that email, they will be able to log in into the Amazon App Store and download your application in live app testing mode. This allows you to test your applications in a production-like environment. The cool thing is that in live app testing, for example, you can test all the transactions that will happen inside your application with a full-blown UI of the Amazon App Store and the transaction UI. However, your customers will not be charged for the transaction. So you can have them purchase multiple in-app items or entitlements, and the UI will look exactly the same as it would look like if the app was live and in production. But your testers, of course, will not be charged for when the application is being tested. They will only be charged, and of course, in the final stage, which is when you take a live app testing version of your application and you promote that version to be a production application. Once you do that, and you publish your application, then the application becomes a full blown production application. All the in-app items become real in-app items, and at that point customers will be transacting on your application in true production mode. But it's a great way to beta test, literally beta test your application in a very, very safe mode. Our documentation covers a lot of additional things, like how you can test new version of published apps. You might have a published application, because it might be not the first time that you are doing this. You might have the production version, and then you submit a new version that you want to go into live app testing. And an important note, it says if you want to promote the test version of an app that already has a live published version, the APK in the test version must have a version code greater than or equal to those in the current live version. So let's say that you have in production live, you have version 7. The version that you submit in live app testing cannot have version 7 as well, or cannot be version 6, but it will need to be version 8, for example, or 9. So this is kind of the gist of live app testing. There is actually quite a lot that you can go through in our documentation, but the basic concept is this one. So Anisha, did we share the link in the chat? Well, I think we will
we did.
in a second. Great, thank you very much. And yeah, I don't know if there are any question on live app testing, and if I don't know if you guys have ever used live app testing before. There is a question which is not really on live app testing, but it's on app bundles, and is the question: does Amazon support Android app bundles? That's something that we are working on. So we gave an official communication last year that we plan to introduce support for Android app bundles, but currently we're only supporting the kind of the standard APK format for applications. App bundles are not yet supported. Thank you, Abid.
Thank you.
No worries. So I don't know if there are any questions about live app testing, but I would say that I do have a question for you, Anisha, which is, do you have any horror stories to tell? I think that the best way to persuade developers and convince you guys to start adopting this feature is what happens when you don't.
Definitely. So I have my own story, but I actually listened to this podcast. It's a great podcast. It's called Syntax FM, and they have whole episodes dedicated to production horror stories. So if ours don't convince you, it's a great podcast to listen to. And it tells you all the reasons why you should be testing your apps. But my horror story, so I was working on an app which came out last year. It was a web app, and it came out last year, and it was crazy because we had to go from 0 to production in 2 months. So as you can imagine, I mean, to go live to the world in 2 months would require heavy testing, but we tried our best. We did have a staging environment, we had a production environment, a test environment, everything, and 2 weeks. 2 hours, 2 hours before we're meant to go live to the entire world with this app. We pushed a staging environment, everything's fine. We're on a really tight deadline, and then we decide, right, okay, staging environment looks good, let's push everything live. So everything goes live, and none of our media is surfacing, and I'm crapping myself. I'm like, great, okay, I'm tech lead on this, nothing's working, what am I going to do? So we redirect people to the staging environment briefly to fix things that are going wrong on production, because staging worked fine. So great thing we had a staging environment, because that saved us. But I'm debugging on production. I don't know what's happening. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I've been doing this for like an hour. I've asked all the developers on my team. And so I bring in the architect, and I'm like, well, do you know what's going wrong? And he's like, oh, yeah, I do. And it turns out like we'd hard coded something in the backend. So first thing you never do, don't hard code anything. But I was one word, which was we'd set something to private, and that's why staging was working, but like the production environment wasn't working. So I think the key takeaway from here is don't put your tasks on a post-it note on your computer, because if you're the only one who knows about it, it's going to cause haywire when you go live. And second is, don't hard code everything, but make sure you have a test environment if you do decide to hard code things.
So amazing, great example. Don't I agree. Don't never hard code. Bad idea. So prompt out there. I want to hear your horror stories as well, guys. Like, do you have any horror stories about testing in production? I think those are always fun. I'll tell you my fun story. This was a few years ago before joining Amazon as a developer relations, and as a developer evangelist. I'm a developer. I used to be an indie developer myself, and a lot of my applications, those applications, some of them are still published to date. I was big into customization applications, and Android is great because it allows you to customize the look and feel of applications, and the look and feel of your phone as well, and tablet. So I had these a few applications that I was using, and I built this engine for. It was a rendering engine for things like live wallpapers and backgrounds and stuff like that. And some of them were quite popular, and I was continuously adding new features. But I have to say that this was my early days. I was an indie developer, very busy, and I fell into the trap of just publishing stuff. Just like, oh, it's a new feature, let me add it and send it to production. And sometimes it goes fine and you don't really get a lot of feedback. But what happened was that one day, all of a sudden, after one new release that I had, I started receiving 1-star reviews, like hundreds of 1-star reviews. And I'm like, what happened? Like, what did I do? What like, I don't know. I don't understand. And I started going into the logs and see what was happening with these applications. And what happened is that a few days before, a very famous, popular device manufacturer of Android devices released a version of their device that had a very specific and unique screen size and format and shape. And the problem is that the rendering engine that I wrote before didn't really take into account that specific that specific configuration, that specific resolution. Was a super high resolution as well. So what was happening is that the rendering engine was actually cutting the background images on the top and on the bottom, because it couldn't scale those images. And since those were like live and animated components, it really created a lot of horrible artifacts on the device. And this could be avoided if I did use something like live app testing or beta testing in general, because instead of just pushing things to production, I would have had a pre-release version, a release candidate that I would have put through some trusted testers before I would push that application to production. And it was a big problem because it was a paid application as well. It wasn't a free application where you could, potentially mitigate expectations. When there is a transaction involved, you want to provide a great experience to the customer. So I didn't back then, and I had to fast and furiously go back and try to fix it. I was like, oh my god, let me fix it. And if I instead had a better environment and a better stage release as well, that is something that it could have been easily avoided, because we would have triggered the issue. The issues would be very likely be triggered before. One thing that we didn't mention today, but we will cover more maybe in one of the next sessions actually, is one additional feature that is available to developers, which is called stage rollout. which is a fairly intuitive functionality of the developer portal that allows you, when you have a new version, you can decide also to potentially soft launch it, in the sense that you can restrict the number of users that can actually access your application. And that is a great way to, even when you think you're ready for production, you've done live up testing and everything, you can say, okay, release this only to 1% of my users. And then if anything goes well, you can then, increase the amount of users in the further stages until you get to 100% release, and then you're fully into production. At that point, you can have some safeguards when you are releasing your application, and you might want to pace your release as well, so it gives you enough time after you do stage one. You will go back and assess it and test it. If there is anything that goes wrong, you can go back to live up testing and implement these like fix things, go back into production, like make sure that everything goes well, and then go back to your stage rollout. Wonderful. So guys, I can't believe that you don't have production live horror stories. Like,
Oh, we
ooh,
do
here we
have
go.
one. Do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, we can actually post it. Let's share it.
It's gonna be a very weird. Okay, so we've got a great story here. So I managed an app for a very high-profile sports client, and they have a very tough deadlines because of the football season. We were once in danger of not meeting a season deadline, and the app would have stopped working if it didn't go live on time. The club leadership directly pressured them to certify the app and immediately push it live. The app was certified within 30 minutes of us sitting it and pushed live. Great story, yeah.
That is cool. That is Fast and Furious implementation. Um, Brilliant.
It is
Thanks
hard,
for
isn't it, though,
sharing.
to I think what we do struggle as with developers is to convince people that, and what clients, that testing is worth the time and effort. And that's something, I had to struggle with quite a lot when I was a full-time developer. But I think, when we show them the great things that testing and security testing and like live app testing and debugging can do, when we implement the right tools, it really does show them like how much time and effort they would save in the long term. So
Absolutely. So no, I think it's crucial that and also like times have changed. I would say that there is an
definitely.
expectations even from users that everything that you're doing in your application is well tested and very secure. And by leveraging things like the Amazon DRM integration, you're also leveraging a very secure protection mechanism for your content that is provided directly by Amazon. So it's great that you leverage these, if you can leverage these functionalities to ensure a great service to your users.
Hmm.
Brilliant. Do we have any more testing in production horror stories, guys? I want to hear more. I don't know if we have more. If not, post it, like send it to us. We'll
Yeah.
be sharing more over the next sessions. I'm sure this is not definitely not going to be our last session about testing. We're just getting started. So the other thing that I also wanted to always say is, like, what do you want to hear from us, guys? Like, we always try to pitch new content to you, new ideas, and to bring more from Amazon. But we want to, like, what would you like to hear in one of the next sessions as well? Is there a specific topic? Is it like Fire TV? Is it tablets? Is it design? Is it implementation? Is it new features? I We would love to hear from you. We are here for you, and we want to make sure that we provide the best service possible. So let us know using hashtag Amazon Fireside Chat what you want to hear more. And yeah, we'll try to make sure that we bring in more stories. And soon we'll hopefully have guest speakers as well and more faces. So if you're getting tired of just me and Anisha, hopefully soon we'll have more to spice it up a little bit. But hopefully you can stick with us even more. So Anisha, before we close, I think we should actually say, what are we going to talk about next week?
Definitely. And it kind of brings us to your horror story, doesn't it, actually? So why you should I'll let you introduce the topic, but next week is designing great Android apps for tablets. So we will be talking about, how you can design great apps that take into account things like aspect ratios, um, that we that will make sure that you don't have horror stories like Mario's.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that is the talk that I would have loved to have seen, 10 years ago. I'm kidding. No, I think it's there will be few things for everyone, right? Like I think there will be few tips for early starters that are thinking about like how can I bring like how does even designing a good Android applications for a tablet look like, and then we will jump into some tips and tricks on what are the metrics and measurements and scaling mechanisms that you can do to build a pixel perfect application. I think that is where we want to get to. We want to get to applications that look great, doesn't matter which device you're using. And we'll be talking specifically about handheld devices and even more specifically about tablets, which is something important. Like a lot of developers create apps for phones, but tablets are different. Yeah, I think it will be a very interesting session. We will have a lot to talk about, specifically about design and UI, XML layouts. We'll be touching in on some modern Android development as well, and what can be some tips and tricks in that sense as well. So yeah, I'm sure that it will be great and you shouldn't miss it. So remember, next week, 6 p.m. GMT, 10 a.m. PT, we'll be here
Yeah.
as usual. We have a comment
Yeah.
from Ang Chang. It would be great to have a sample app that shows off the different features you talked about in prior weeks. Anisha, I think we do have quite a sample applications we can share, right?
Yeah, in fact, I can actually share the DRM sample app that we were talking
Mhm.
about. We have a few minutes. Let me share that briefly.
Amazing.
And for the rest of them, so we did share the Fire App Builder. We will soon be having sample apps for all the in-app purchasing API methods we talked about, so subscriptions, entitlements. We should have sample apps, but this particular app for DRM can actually be found on the SDK when you download the Appstore SDK. So if you I'll let Mario post the link in the chat, but if you go to Amazon app like developer Amazon/SDK, you can see this particular app in the folder. Um so Yes, sorry. That should be there. So this is the DRM sample app. So we saw how it worked. And I'll briefly talk you through the code that's here in the main activity. So the first thing we have is that initiate license verification method. So this is in the on create, and that's right here. And as you can see, it takes in two parameters that we spoke about. And once we've implemented this, you can see the verification callback, which is the basic implementation of the licensing listener. So this has all the statuses that we saw: license, not license, expired, error verification, error invalid licensing keys, and unknown error. So it's a very simple application. It just has this callback right here. It has in the main activity the license. Sorry, here we go. The verify license, which has the application context. So that one right there is the parameter, and our implementation of the license verification callback, which is this file here. So those are the main building blocks. As you can see, it's not like a lot of code. It's quite easy to implement. We have some more setup in this app, but those are the two main components that you need. So
Awesome.
yeah, I think Mario has posted it in the chat.
Yeah, I posted it, and here's the link in the on screen as well. Developer Amazon.com, docs, apps and games, SDK downloads. You can also just Google Amazon App Store SDK, and you will easily find it.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything about the DRM app, Mario? Sorry.
No, No, so you can we can repeat that. You can find that in when you download the App Store SDK from the developer portal. This link, it's a zip file that also contains the
Yeah.
sample apps. Wonderful. Fantastic. So we are actually at time. So guys, as usual, there is a question. So the DRM app is under EDA purchasing SDKs and plugins. There is actually a yes, that's exactly right. Let me actually share my screen so I can show directly where it is. Just 1 second. Here we go. Should be able to see it. So yes, if you go to this link that we just shared, it will look like this, and you just need to scroll down at the bottom, actually, and there is App Store SDK, and you can download the Android version, and from this one, it will contain the sample applications as well.
Yeah, so it might be slightly confusing because the in-app purchasing SDK is the older version. So that was V2, and that has now been replaced by the App Store SDK, which has
Yeah.
the same functionality, the same in-app purchasing API. It is just the new version, which you should be implementing, because the old one will be deprecated in the future.
Yeah, I think we have this one here in a purchasing SDK. Again, it says sunsetting. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a good call out. We can go back to the documentation team and maybe add a bigger disclaimer.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a good point. It is this one, App Store SDK. That's the one that you want.
Yeah. And on our YouTube channel, you will be able to see videos that talk specifically about how to implement the Appstore SDK, how to test the in-app purchasing, DRM API, full tutorials that go into a lot more in depth about everything we've spoken about, dive into the code a lot more. So yeah, definitely check out our YouTube.
Brilliant. All right, guys, as usual, thank you very much for being with us. One thing that I wanted to share is, again, make sure that you follow us on all the above channels, that you like and subscribe to this channel, share with everyone. Remember to use the Amazon FireSideChat hashtag to share everything that you have learned. Use this one and we're good to go. And thanks for being with us once again. I'm Mario.
I'm Manisha.
And see you next Tuesday.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.